Hi, I'm Andrej. Apologies for using AI narration. I believe my accent and pronunciation might be distracting for some of you, so I chose a clearer method of communication. What follows is not speculation. It is a mathematical function, a projection of human energy production growth over time. Even during extreme events such as wars, pandemics, and full lockdowns, the global energy growth curve has never been disrupted. That historical stability, along with many real-world drivers, leads me to assume this growth will continue. This video explores the thermodynamic consequences of that growth. It is not about ideology or politics, it is about physics. If energy production continues to increase at the current rate, what happens next? The thermodynamic limit of civilization. Why atmospheric reduction is inevitable. One introduction, the ignored problem. Today's fight against climate change focuses almost entirely on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. However, even in a perfectly green energy system, a fundamental issue remains. The act of producing and using energy generates heat. As civilization grows, this heat becomes an exponential problem, not because of emissions, but because of the laws of thermodynamics. Nasht. 2. The energy limit equation. Let's define. Let's equals solar power received by Earth, 1.740 has 1010 W, 174 petawatts. Drus T Tara equals human energy production consumption as a function of time. R equals annual growth rate of global energy use, e.g. 2%. Current state, 2025. Human energy consumption, 210 Watu, 20 terawatts. Ratio, T 2025 Bosleth 1.15 times 10 mesoskr 0.0115 bis of solar input. Critical threshold, Quasid, equals 0.1 times Y1VAD, 10% of incoming solar power. This means our energy production will start adding enough heat to completely saturate Earth's cooling capacity. Since Earth already receives 100% of the sun's energy, adding another 10% artificially pushes the system toward an unmanageable thermal load. And because producing energy requires high temperatures, in combustion, fission, or even concentrated solar, we end up recycling that heat constantly. That is a basic law of thermodynamics. There's no speculation here. Assuming exponential growth, T equals Z 2025 times E minus 2025. To find the critical point, T equals 2025 1 aft ln 0.1 with R equals 0.02, 2% growth. T 2025 plus 50 ln 870 T 2025 plus 338 T. So now by the year 2363 to 2370, civilization reaches a point where its energy use becomes thermodynamically unsustainable. Note, if growth accelerates due to AI, space industry, automation, this tipping point comes much sooner. Positive feedback loops could begin as early as the year 2200. Number 3. What happens at 10% of solar input? The Earth can no longer passively radiate enough heat. Atmospheric convection and infrared radiation become insufficient. Global temperatures rise exponentially. At that point, cooling becomes more energy-intensive than heating, creating a thermodynamic trap. The natural biosphere collapses. Agriculture, ecosystems, freshwater supplies, wild species can no longer survive without artificial support. Nash 4. The only solution, atmospheric reduction. For long-term survival, we must remove or drastically reduce Earth's atmosphere so that waste heat can escape more efficiently into space. We must transition to closed habitats, domes, underground cities, orbital habitats. We must develop active planetary-scale cooling systems before the critical threshold is reached. Technical options include orbital thermal shielding, direct atmospheric removal, mass scale, vacuum-coupled cooling systems. 5. Economic and strategic implications. Today, initial investments in geoengineering, development of closed-loop biospheres, legal groundwork for post-atmospheric civilization. By 2100, enclosed agriculture, first industrial infrastructure beyond Earth. By 2200, active thermal control, experimental atmospheric reduction systems. By 2300, full-scale migration to closed environments. 6. Conclusion. The thermodynamic fate of civilization is predictable. If we continue to grow our energy use, the biosphere cannot survive. Reducing energy use is not a viable solution. It would lead to collapse of healthcare systems, no vaccines, no sterilization, unmanaged nuclear waste, inability to respond to rising seas, global famine and societal breakdown. Therefore, atmospheric control and closed-system migration are the only long-term survival strategies. I'm not claiming we must immediately remove the entire atmosphere. There may be a transitional solution, a form of gradual adaptation. Perhaps we won't need to wear spacesuits outside of habitats, but instead create controlled conditions, a thin, inert atmosphere, e.g. argon, with added oxygen only inside inhabited zones. After all, we're already moving toward increasing control over everything necessary for life: food, water, energy, and now even air. In this context, the CO2 tax is not just an economic tool, it's a practical example of atmospheric composition control. If we can regulate the chemical makeup of air for climate reasons, then controlling pressure and atmospheric structure for thermodynamic reasons is simply the next step. We don't need to see the future to understand where this leads. We only need to connect the dots from the data we already have. Of course, there's always the possibility of a cosmic catastrophe, like an asteroid impact. If that happens, the problem of planetary overheating, CO2 emissions, or nuclear waste will no longer matter. Just like dinosaurs don't have any problems anymore. But I don't see that as a positive outcome.